Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We are cutting through the noise today, really getting into some current research, and we're focusing on competitive swimming, but maybe not the part you first think of. Forget the shoulders for a sec. We're diving into the core, that often overlooked secret to speed.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of the engine room, isn't it? Provides that essential platform for, well, all the propulsion. When we usually look at swimming, we tend to focus on arms, legs.
Right, the obvious stuff.
Exactly. But without a stable trunk, a lot of that power just gets, well, lost, dissipated. So today we're doing a deep analysis of a specific scientific study that really drills down into this.
Okay, straight to the source then. Let's break down the findings. The article is called The Effect of the 8-Week Core Muscle Training in Swimming Time, Swimming Force, and Core Muscle Activity Among Swimmers, a randomized controlled trial. Quite a title. Who did the work here?
The main authors were Wan-Yu Kwok, Billy Chun-Lung Stelios G. Psycharakis, and Shamay Sheung-Mei. And it's very recent, published in 2025. It's in the Journal of Sports Science and Medicine, volume 24, pages 755 to 763.
Got it. And their goal sounds super focused. So our mission for this deep dive is to see what actually happens when competitive swimmers add, 8 weeks of special core work?
On dry land?
Yeah, exactly. Did it make them faster in the 50-meter front crawl? Did it boost the actual force they could generate? And maybe most interestingly, how did it change the way their core muscles were firing, electrically speaking?
Right. To really get why this matters, maybe we should first talk about why the core is so important in swimming. It's not just about having abs, right?
Not at all. It's less about generating force itself and more about stability. Think of it like a kinetic link. It's the solid connection, the pipeline, sort of, that transfers torque and power between your upper and lower body. If that link is weak or floppy,
Then the energy leaks out. Like if I kick hard but my middle is wobbly, that power doesn't really drive me forward as much. Precisely. The core ties it all together, makes the body work as one unit. And we have seen this before. Previous studies showed general strength and conditioning helps, and targeted core work often gave like a 2 to 3% boost in swim time.
Okay, so there's precedent, but what was new here? What pushed this study?
Intensity, really. That was a key driver.
You mean how hard the muscles work at different race speeds?
Exactly. Researchers used integrated EMG, that's electromyography, measuring electrical activity DRA. And they found core muscle activation is way higher during sprints. We're talking 38.7 up to maybe 141.1 microvolts. Compare that to middle distance swimming, where it's more like 16.7 to 86.9 microvolts.
Wow, that's potentially more than double the electrical demand when sprinting flat out.
Yeah. So the thinking is, if you're a sprinter, focusing on core training should give you the biggest bang for your buck. You're strengthening the system that's working hardest during your race. Now, the authors also pointed out something important they wanted to fix in their design.
What was that?
Well, a lot of older studies just lumped male and female swimmers together, which, makes it hard to generalize the findings.
Yeah, that seems like a big issue. Men and women have physiological differences. You can't just average them out and expect it to apply perfectly to everyone when you're designing training, right?
Absolutely. Coaches need specific insights. So this study made a point of separating the results by sex to get clearer, more targeted information.
Yeah, makes sense. So let's get into the how. How did they actually run this test? What did the 8 weeks look like?
All right, so it was a randomized controlled trial. They got 32 competitive swimmers, all 12 or older, training hard, already at least 5 water sessions a week. Then they randomly split them. 16 in the experimental group, the EG, and 16 in the control group, the CG.
Okay, standard setup.
Yeah.
But I think I remember seeing a note about the ages specifically for the guys.
Ah, yes, good point. The researchers flagged this themselves. The average age in the male EG was about 14.87 years, but the male CG averaged 17.40 years. That's a pretty significant age gap.
Yeah, nearly 2.5 years difference. That's potentially huge in terms of development, strength spurts. How did they account for that? It could skew the comparison, couldn't it?
It definitely could. It's a limitation. Their main approach was to focus heavily on the within-group changes. So comparing the EG swimmers' results after the training to their own baseline results before the training, that helps isolate the effect of the core program itself rather than just comparing them to the older group.
Gotcha. Less about EG versus CG, more about did the EG swimmers themselves improve?
Yeah.
So what was the intervention for the EG?
They kept up their normal swimming schedule, which was already pretty intense, 7 to 9 sessions a week. But on top of that, they added 2 dryland core sessions each week, Each one lasted about 35 to 45 minutes. And the program wasn't just about brute strength. It was focused on stability through different movements, different planes.
So not just endless crunches.
Definitely not. They used unstable surfaces quite a bit. Swiss balls, balance pads, trying to mimic that dynamic, slightly unpredictable aquatic environment. Exercises included things like the plank, sure, but also bird dog, bed bug, back extensions, the Pallof press, even squats focusing on core engagement.
Okay, Pallof press, that's the anti-rotation one, right? Where you're fighting the band pulling you sideways.
Exactly. It's about resisting unwanted movement, training the core to brace the spine when external forces try to twist it, which is exactly what happens when you rotate to breathe or when one arm is pulling hard through the water. And they progressed it too. Every 2 weeks, they'd up the intensity, maybe add resistance bands, or cut down the rest time.
All right, progressive overload makes sense. Now, the measurements. Obviously, they timed the 50-meter swims. What else did they track? How did they measure the physics underneath?
They had 3 main layers of testing, done both before the 8 weeks started and right after it finished. Layer 1, performance, 50-meter front crawl time, but also stroke rate, SR, stroke length, SL, and overall swimming velocity, SV.
Okay, the standard metrics. Layer 2.
Kinetics, force production. They use the tethered swimming test, the TST. This is where the swimmer basically swims in place, pulling against a force sensor for about 30 seconds. It gives a pure measure of their raw pulling or kicking power. They tested the whole body stroke, WB, just arm stroking, AS, and just legs kicking, LK. And the TST is known to be really reliable. Tethered force can actually explain, over 80% of your swimming performance variance.
So the tethered test strips away technique efficiency almost and just measures raw horsepower.
Pretty much, yeah. How much force or impulse over time they can generate against that fixed resistance. Then, layer 3. This was the neuromuscular adaptation part. They used surface EMG again, but this time during the 50-meter swim itself. Specifically, they calculated something called the Co-contraction index, or CCI.
Okay, CCI co-contraction. That's when opposing muscles fire at the same time, like abs and back muscles.
Exactly. Your rectus abdominis, your main ab muscle, and your erector spinae in the lower back. When they activate together, they stiffen the spine, provide stability. It's like tightening guide wires on a mast. And this was actually the first study to use SEMG to measure this co-contraction index, this stability measure, while the athletes were actually swimming their event.
Really? That seems like a big step, measuring it in action.
Yeah.
Okay, so the moment of truth. After 8 weeks of planks and Pallof presses, what happened? Did the swimmers get faster?
Well, yes, the results showed some significant positive changes, especially within the experimental group. Now, it's important to note they didn't always find statistically significant differences between the EG and the control group across every single measure. But the improvements within the EG were pretty compelling.
Let's focus on those within group improvements then. That's often what a coach or athlete cares about most. Did I get better?
Right. So the male swimmers in the experimental group, the ones doing the extra core work, they significantly dropped their 50-meter time. By an average of 0.59 seconds, that's about a 1.94% improvement, which is, pretty substantial in a sprint.
Nearly 2%. Yeah, it's a big chunk of time in a 50. Was that backed up by velocity changes?
It was. Their swimming velocity increased, and the effect size for this time improvement was large, suggesting it was a meaningful change due to the intervention. It really seems to validate the approach, especially for those male sprinters.
Okay. What about the female swimmers in the EG?
They also improved. They dropped their time by 0.39 seconds on average, which is about a 1.23% improvement. Now, this was better than the control group's change, which was minimal, but this result didn't quite reach statistical significance.
Why might that be?
The researchers suggested it might just be down to the smaller sample size for the females. Fewer participants makes it harder to detect statistically significant effects, but the trend was definitely positive. They did get faster.
Right. Positive trend, even if not statistically significant between groups. Did the core work change how they were swimming, like their stroke mechanics, longer glide, faster turnover?
It looks like it leaned towards faster turnover. The male EG swimmers significantly increased their stroke rate by almost 2 strokes per minute. And interestingly, their stroke length only decreased by a tiny negligible amount, about 0.03 meters per cycle.
So they were turning their arms over faster, but without really shortening their reach.
Pretty much. It suggests the stronger core helped them maintain technique and stability even at a higher tempo. Increased SR is often linked to higher force production and speed, so this fits the picture.
Okay, that makes sense. Now let's go deeper. The force stuff? The tethered swimming test and that muscle co-contraction index.
Yeah.
Did the raw power numbers line up with the faster times?
Generally, yes. It supports that core stability idea, helping transfer force. The experimental group overall showed improvements, maybe marginal but noticeable, in force during the TSTs. Both the arms-only and legs-only tests showed positive trends.
Were there any standout results here, maybe split by gender again?
Absolutely. The female EG swimmers showed a significant improvement within their group for the mean impulse, basically the total force applied over time during the arm stroking only test. And the effect size there was large, suggesting a strong impact. Meanwhile, the male EG swimmers had significant interaction effects for mean impulse in both the whole body test and the legs kicking only test.
So it looks like the core work really helped the females generate more force with their arms, while for the males, it improved the whole sit integration and the leg drive.
That seems to be the pattern, yeah. It suggests the core is optimizing that power transfer differently. But maybe the most fascinating part was the co-contraction index, the CCI, how their muscles were actually firing together.
Right, the internal stability measure. What did they find there?
This is where the sex difference really seemed to show up, though, again, not always reaching statistical significance between groups. Female swimmers in the experimental group generally showed an increase in their CCI after the training.
So their abs and back muscles were working together more. More co-contraction, meaning potentially more spinal stiffness or stability.
That's the interpretation, yes. Improved internal bracing. But the male swimmers, their results were much more variable. Some increased their CCI, some actually decreased it.
That's interesting. So for females, more stability seems good, but for males, it's mixed. Why would that be? Maybe too much stiffness is bad.
That's exactly the hypothesis. For a male sprinter, maybe becoming too rigid through excessive co-contraction could actually be counterproductive. It might increase the energy cost without giving a proportional boost in performance, like you're fighting yourself internally a bit too much, wasting energy that could go into propulsion.
Right, hitting the brakes while trying to accelerate. You need enough stability, but not so much that it hinders movement or drains the tank.
Precisely. And the researchers pointed out this kind of aligns with other studies on sex-specific muscle activation patterns. It really suggests that the optimal core training strategy might be different. Maybe females benefit more from maximizing that pure stability, while males need to find that sweet spot of enough stability for force transfer, but without excessive energy costs.
Okay, so pulling this all together, what's the main message for a swimmer or a coach listening to this? What's the big takeaway?
I think the study gives pretty solid evidence that adding this kind of specific dry land core work can lead to real performance gains, especially looking at the within-group results. The positive trends in force are there too, but the key takeaway is probably nuance and customization. The core's job is complex. It's a stabilizer, a force conduit. Its effects aren't always obvious externally and might need sensitive tests like SEMG to really understand.
And there were limitations, right? Things we still need to figure out.
Definitely. The researchers were upfront about that. The small sample size, particularly for subgroup analyses, and that age difference in the male groups is a factor that needs careful consideration or control in future work. Manual timing was also used, which isn't as precise as electronic, but the big push for future research is to really nail down these potential sex-specific responses. Why the different CCI patterns? And we also need, ideally, things like underwater cameras to analyze leg kinematics, to see exactly how better core stability might be changing body position, reducing drag, especially from the kick.
So wrapping it up, the evidence suggests, yes, this kind of dry land core training can boost swim performance on top of regular training, especially for sprinters. But it's not just do more core. The way it helps might differ between male and female swimmers, relating to stability versus maybe efficient force transfer without too much bracing.
Exactly. It prompts you to think beyond just strengthening the core and consider how you want it to function, increase stiffness, or optimize low-cost power transfer.
So the message isn't just train your core. It's more like train your core smart, considering your specific needs and maybe even sex-specific responses. Something for you listening to think about with your own training. Is your core program just building muscle? Or is it truly enhancing that kinetic link for your stroke?
Use these insights, maybe take a closer look at your own routine. Is your core really working as that powerful, efficient link it's supposed to be?
And if you really want to get into the weeds, see the specific exercises, the full stats, the nitty-gritty methodology,
then definitely check out the full article. It's worth the read.
We absolutely recommend it. And if you found this deep dive useful, breaking down the science behind performance,
make sure you follow the channel, turn on those notifications. We'll be back with more analyses like this one.